Welcome to the next part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure review. As I've said before, each JoJo story is different from each other, so to compare this to Phantom Blood is unfair, but this story is great. It has guns, explosions, gore, Nazis, vampires, bigger vampires, insane fights, cyborg Nazis, and so forth. How Phantom Blood was an English-based kind of story, with the way its characters behaved in a gentleman manner and had castle settings, Untitled Tendency is like an old-school American action movie, which is good because it's not trying to catch lightning in a bottle like Part 1, but it's its own story which, to me, makes it as good as Part 1. But let me give you the story of Battle Tendency. Taking place 50 years after the fight with Dio, we meet Joseph, who is living with his only family, Grandma Arena and Uncle Speedwagon. He's just being a normal teen until the Joestar fate thrusts him into an adventure he can't turn away from, and the stone masks resurface and with their true masters. An old friend's betrayal causes an ancient evil to be unleashed. Nazis unearth the Pillar Men, beings beyond humans, and by using the stone mask will rule the world. Joseph has to journey around the world befriending strange allies, and must engage the Pillar Men before they can find the Red Stone of Asia, which when used with the stone mask will fully evolve them to gods and be able to walk in the sun. Along the journey, Joseph will travel the world in a game of cat and mouse. He must learn the ripple from the familiar faces, fight enemies whose powers are beyond the humans, have to face tragedy like his family before him, discover his family bloodline, and ultimately finish what his grandfather started. He must save the world. Now let's go into why I think this story is as good as Phantom Blood. Let's look at Joseph Joestar. Characters in the book often compare him to his grandfather, saying he has his pride, but unlike his grandfather, he comes off as a typical teen. He's rebellious, cocky, and is always wanting the girls. Joseph accepts his destiny rather fast, the way he'll travel the world, ready to battle enemies whose powers are insane. But he is armed more than just the ripple. He has a huge knowledge of battle tactics. He'll outsmart his opponents and then finish them off. He's an interesting character. He says one thing and do the other. If you like Phantom Blood and Jonathan as much as I did, you'll be sure to enjoy the roller coaster adventure of Joseph Joestar. Now to show you who stands in the way of Joseph, the powers who wish to destroy the world, the Pillar Men. In a nutshell, Pillar Men come from an ancient race of humanoids that had extraordinary strength, intelligence, and lifespan. This race once ruled the world, living at the top of the food chain, and drained the life energy of living creatures, much like how vampires drain blood, but this resulted in the humans seeing them as gods and demons. They made the stone mask, which proved to be effective on humans, which can bring out their full potential through acupuncture. However, they found that although the stone mask worked on ordinary humans and would turn them into vampires, its stimulation was too weak and for powerful creatures like them. They needed to combine the stone mask with the red stone of Asia to achieve their goal of evolving into ultimate life forms. Unable to find the red stone of Asia, they transformed to stone pillars 200 years ago and went into hibernation. Only 4 of them went into hibernation, and now awaken onto the world: Satana, AC/DC, Wamu, and Kars, all of which serve under their leader, Kars, who is looking for the redstone. Not only being more powerful than humans, they are able to manipulate their own bodies. 3 of them actually have their own individual abilities. AC/DC has a similar battle strategy to Joseph, as he knows the art of war too. His ability is Skill of Fire, as he can raise his body temperature in order to heat his blood to 500 Celsius. He then extends his blood vessels out of his body and makes them into long needles, really, which can eject his hot blood into enemies, dissolving them from within. With his power and his constant changing temper, he's a dangerous enemy. Wamu is introduced as a servant to both ACC and Kars. He is a very strong and honourable warrior who possesses the power of wind, allowed to draw air into his body and blast it through the tip of the horn, creating a high destructive wind scalpel. He is honourable and shows the Pillar Men are not just monsters. Kars is the leader of the Pillar Men. He is intelligent, ruthless, and single-minded in his dedication to obtain the Red Stone of Asia. Strangely, despite his apathy towards humans and willingness to kill them, he is shown to be more compassionate to other living beings. Kars' power is that of light. He is able to produce blade appendages from his arms and use them to reflect blinding light towards the enemy. He also has the same power all over his body that of all the Pillar Men share. When he gains the power of the Red Stone, He becomes invulnerable to light and also gains some abilities on a genetic level. He can reduce living creatures and control them. He can mutate his body into various forms. Kaz is a lot like Dio in some ways. He doesn't care who dies as long as he gets what he wants. Again, another great villain for the Joestar family to fight. But again, it's not all about the key characters. It's also about the people that help Joseph along his adventure. It's only been 50 years, so some characters are still alive. One being the most notable is Speedwagon. He's now one of the richest men in America due to striking oil. He set up the Speedwagon Foundation, which becomes his legacy, and runs through all the remaining JoJo stories, and as a staple to his loyalty to Jonathan, and the Foundation will help Joestars to fight against pending evil. Speedwagon remains a great man, helping raise Joseph, taking care of Irina, and as if he made a promise forever to Jonathan to help him, but he truly remains a British gentleman. Much like returning characters, we meet a descendant like Joseph. Caesar A. Zeppeli, the grandson of Will A. Zeppeli. He's a suave ladies' man, as well as skilled ripple user. He is rather cool and collective, especially compared to Joseph, with whom he grudgingly prepared to fight the Pillar Men. Caesar seems to blame Joseph's grandfather for the death of his, and starts a rival, which is a good twist compared to the grandfather's friendship, but over time he changes his way and comes to understand why his grandfather helped Jonathan, because the Joestar bloodline is a courageous one. Sadly, history is doomed to repeat, where like his grandfather, he has to meet his fate, but not before sending a ripple bowl for Joseph, giving him his strength, just like his grandfather. A man who despised his family learns that a man has to make choices that will mean the ultimate sacrifice. Caesar lives up to the great legacy of the Zeppeli family. There are much more notable characters, such as Rudolf Von Stroheim, who was an awesomely cool guy, but if I fear that I mention he is a Nazi, I might get hate mail. Wait, you know what, I'll just talk about him regardless of being a Nazi. The power of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure makes him an awesome, and I'll tell you why. First of all, get the idea of evil Nazi out of your head. He is a patriot to his country, so most of the time he is following orders. But as soon as he caused the Pillar Men to be unearthed, he knows he has to stop them and helps Joseph by making the sacrifice and pays for what he did. Or so we think. Death doesn't stop him. He just comes back. But he doesn't come back the way we think. He comes back as a cyborg, and as a cyborg Nazi. That is cool on many levels. But to sum it up, he's an honourable man who will serve his country and stop the mistake his people made. So if you want to hate me for liking a Nazi, please read the manga and understand why I think he's cool. I would also mention the Ripple Master who teaches Joseph and Caesar. Lisa is a mysterious woman who protects the Redstone. That's all I'm going to say about her, because her backstory is one you have to read, and if I said it, it'll be a big spoiler. Oh, and one last shout out to a character who I guess was trying to be like Speedwagon. Smokey, a young black kid who Joseph saved from some cops and becomes his friend. He follows him for the most of the story, but doesn't do much else. I think he's a nice character, but just didn't get to do much. As time has changed, so has the Ripple. People who use the Ripple this time around don't seem to do it hand-to-hand combat, but use weapons and tools to carry the Ripple. Joseph has been known to use the butt of a gun and a pair of crackers. Caesar uses the Ripple in an elegant way like his grandfather by using Ripple in bubbles. Lisa uses a scarf and etc. Ripple is still cool and used in more exciting ways, but there's still a lack of over-the-top punching. Okay, now time to wrap this up. Like I said at the beginning, it is best to explain this as an old-school action film. We get ancient evil, awesome fights, Nazis, flying around the world, etc. I am talking about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, not Indiana Jones, by the way. But that's how fun the action is in this story. We get a lot of fun, but also a lot of tragedy, like phantom blood. It might seem like I'm hyping part 1 and 2 up a lot, but it's because they're really well written, and a good read, but all is about to change. My next review might surprise you by how I think it fails to live up to part 1 and 2. Next up, the acclaimed most popular JoJo story, where we meet Jotaro, reveal the power of stands, and have evil reborn. Next time, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, Stardust Crusaders.